What's going on? Hope all is well. I hope you all are rocking, having an incredible weekend. I hope you all are staying safe out there. Welcome back to another video. This video is going to be talking about the current state of the crypto market. Cryptos are currently crashing, and we are going to take a look at the short-term, long-term outlooks, as well as what is the fundamental factor at this current moment that is causing price to decline in the way that it is. And so before we jump into today's video, as always, if you ever have any questions, please don't ever hesitate to reach out. This is what we're here for. We love to help you legends take your trading to a whole new level. And so please don't ever hesitate to reach out. You can always reach out on the website at www.pinksand.co. And with that being said, let's jump into today's video. And so no question, legends, we can definitely see here that BTC is without a doubt declining and really pushing into some sensitive areas. Now, the big question at this current time is, where can we expect price to push in the short term, in the long term, and is this momentum going to remain, and for how long? Now, the biggest thing that I will say straight off the bat is that these questions are subjective in nature because there is no conclusive answer. This is totally based on market sentiment and how players in the majority feel with regards to the factors that are causing price to move in the way that it is. Before we jump into the technical side of things and really taking a look at the short-term, long-term outlooks and what we can expect, we really want to have a firm understanding with regards to what is going on with the whole market cap, Bitcoin, Ethereum, the two main players that really do run the show here. And that's simply due to this next phase now for the crypto space. For those that have not been aware, 2020, 2021 were absolutely massive years for the crypto community. They really took that next step when it comes down to adoption, moving from a speculative environment in 2018, 2019, and really making a statement there, moving into some serious numbers when it comes down to the entire crypto environment, and more importantly, the pace in which it did it at. We want to be mindful once again that 2020 was a very unique year with regards to COVID and the variables that came post-COVID with stimulus and all the additional economic actions that were taking place. This really did give the crypto market a whole just a chance to really take things to a whole new level. And so with that in and of itself, and we're going to take a look at the longer term environment in just a second here, that definitely is always going to warrant for some type of correction, pullback, liquidation, just overall bearish pressure, selling pressure that you are seeing right now. The market was genuinely moving in one direction for nearly 2 years now. And so seeing something like this, a 40, 50, 60% correction, is not something abnormal. For someone who's been in the space for as long as I've been a part of 80, 90% corrections. And so seeing something like this, once again, is not abnormal. However, understanding the fundamental reasons on why price is moving in the way that it is incredibly important, because this can definitely help when it comes down to planning for your next short-term and long-term plays. And so when we take a look at that factor, it really comes down to, once again, Bitcoin, Ethereum, the crypto market's entire next phase, which is now moving into this regulated environment. This is the time where the crypto space will start going into what we like to say geopolitical issues, in which ultimately for the crypto space to continue to adopt, continue to make a stance, and ultimately just say that we are here to stay, it's definitely going to have to be going through these hurdles, and that ultimately is going to result in the environment in which you see. And so that will definitely be causing a lot of the short-term pressure in context to the crypto space, but by no means does this mean that we are going anywhere except to the moon in the long-term outlook. And that is something incredibly important to be mindful of. Short-term movements are not indicative of long-term movements. It's incredibly important to be mindful of what is going on and to make sure that you are allocating appropriately. And so we very much understand that because of the factors that are causing the crypto space to move in the way that it is, this could potentially result in price seeing a further decline. Now, jumping into the technical side of things and the reasons on why we potentially see a further decline, what we can definitely see here as follows. For the moment, we do have Excelsius AI turned on just to give us a clear and overall view site with regards to what is going on with price and where we can expect price to move. And so what we can see here is as follows. Bitcoin, and we'll take a look at the total market cap, have successfully gotten through a major point here sitting near this 40K handle. And we can definitely see here, once we do, in fact, we are getting below nearly this 37, 38,000 level, there is really nothing stopping BTC to continue this fall downwards. Be mindful once again that there are a couple of possibilities that can take place, and we're going to be talking about that in just a second, but it does seem for the moment that BTC will continue its pressure into that 30,000 range, and we potentially could push further into below 30,000 if this pressure does remain. Now, be mindful, we are pushing into an extremely sensitive environment. And so with this environment, there is definitely going to be a lot of orders sitting within that area. We'll take a look at the institutional volume profile in just a second. But because there's going to be a lot of volume sitting within that region, this definitely could potentially warrant price to pull back. This pullback, be mindful, will simply be a short-term correction of this entire descending pressure here. You want to take a look at in the past, we have received short-term corrections as well. These corrections are by no means indicative that we are switching any type of direction. If we were going to switch any type of direction, we would definitely want to see some type of shift outside of, in this case, from what Excelsius is showing us here, this 44,000 level. This ultimately would allow for some of this bearish momentum to start subsiding and ultimately decelerating, exhausting, and potentially to start expecting the bulls to start coming back into the market. Until we did receive that type of movement, that break, that shift in such a key level, we're definitely going to expect one of two things: further continued bearish pressure as we initially stated here, or we could expect some type of short-term correction, but still ultimately looking for that continued bearish pressure. Now, be mindful once again, this is very short term, solely due to the variables associated with the crypto space in its entirety. We have never seen more development and adoption for the crypto space than the last 18 months. And so there is no question that this market is going to continue in the direction that it's been for the last year and a half, nearly 2 years. But as stated before, environments such as these, bearish markets such as these, are very much natural. For someone who's been a part of the game for as long as I've been in, right? These 50, 60, 70% corrections, they're not anything intense. It comes with the market itself. This is a very volatile market. And so just because you'll see hundreds to thousands of percents to the upside, you have to be mindful that that can very much take place on the other side as well. And so for the short term, as I said before, we are definitely expecting price to first start pushing into this 30K region. This is definitely when we can start expecting some type of slowdown, but be mindful once again, just because we push into a key region here, this doesn't necessarily mean that you're automatically going to just expect some type of movement such as that. That's not how market structure works. That is not how ultimately markets shift in context to direction. We first and foremost are going to have to start shifting out of some type of short-term significant level here that ultimately will start to say that we can expect some type of short-term correction. But nonetheless, until that takes place, we are definitely still going to be expecting this bearish momentum to continue. Now, taking a look from an institutional volume profile here for a second here, we're going to be turning this on and taking a look from the higher timeframes here. We can definitely start to see, as we're starting to break through some of these more intraday points, we definitely can expect some free fall moving into this 30K range. If we start moving more into the higher timeframes here, we can definitely see here on the 2-day and even the 3-day here, we can definitely see here that a lot, if not the majority of the volume, very much sits within this 30K region for the time being. And so because of that, this is definitely where we're expecting price to push in the short term, but be mindful, once again, what is being said, the short term. What we want to take a look at here real quick, and we're just going to simply take a look at the market in its entirety, take off these 3 points here and move to the monthly time frame here. As stated before, market has been moving in simply one way since about 2020, and we've been moving up. And so what is currently taking place right now is natural. Be mindful, once again, this movement that did take place here was a bit unnatural solely because of the economic actions that had taken place due to COVID-19. And so if we do start to erase some of those gains, it will be understandable because of the variables that were involved that caused such a movement, and we very much have to understand this. However, one thing that's super cool to take a look at, and this is where Excelsius AI really takes things to a whole new level, you can really ultimately turn the market structure into the direction in and of itself. And you can see for the moment that there are no signs of any type of bearish pressure until we would start breaking below this 37, this 38K type of level. If you drop down to the weekly, that concept might change a little bit. If we start coming down to this 28K handle, we could ultimately start expecting some type of bearish pressure in a more grander scale. But nonetheless, we can very much see here that market in its entirety for the moment is still very much bullish. And this is very much true. As mentioned before, market has been moving in one direction this entire time. And so seeing a correction such as this is natural. Also understanding the next phase that the crypto space has to go through, which is the regulation phase. This is ultimately going to warrant the bigger players to start liquidating a bit, looking to reallocate as prices continue to decline. This is the nature of the game, and this has been the nature of the game ever since capital markets have begun from a trading standpoint. And so very much we're going to be seeing the same type of environment. But when it comes down to the short-term outlook, be mindful once again that market very much does look to continue its bearish state. As mentioned, once again, there are really three ways that price can continue its bearish momentum. We're going to simply just push straight down into this 30K region here. We potentially could expect some type of short-term pullback, which is very much what we've seen here in the past take place. But once again, these pullbacks don't ultimately warrant a shift within market. If we want to see that type of shift, we definitely want to be seeing a clear break above that 44K handle. That would definitely allow for some of the sentiment to start slowing down. If this correction did take place, we'd ultimately still expect further continuation down into that 30K handle. Be mindful, sentiment does not change just because of a short-term correction. You ultimately need to see major shifts of major points. And so once we do those start to get down into those 30K regions, these will be very, very interesting to see what happens next. How aggressive is price looking? And more importantly, what is the environment really saying? Be mindful once again, even though the crypto space, the blockchain, everything that comes along with it is absolutely revolutionary, we are still very much in a market that is controlled by individuals that don't necessarily have the long-term outlook that a lot of us very much do with the crypto space. They're here to make money. They're here to make money now. And that is very much going to warrant the types of waves that you will see in this market. And so when we do get back down to that 30K region, it will be very interesting to really see what happens next. Do we continue to receive this bearish pressure? Do we actually start to see some major type of shift? It's impossible to know at this current time. What's incredibly important to be mindful is what's to happen in the short term, what's to happen in the long term. In the short term, as Excelsius is showing us, we're very much looking for that further continued bearish momentum. In the long term, no question, still looking to run to the moon and beyond. That's the most important thing that we really want to take a look at. And if we take a look at the other markets here real quick, we take a look at the total market cap, very much similar to BTC's market. We can very much see that this concept is true. In the short term, still very much looking for this bearish pressure, whether it continues straight down, we receive some type of pullback. We're still looking for that to take place unless we receive some type of major shift of a major level. When we take a look at the longer timeframes here on the monthly and beyond, very much these concepts stay true as well. In context to that market is very much bullish, and there is really nothing changing that in a grander scale. If we drop to the weekly here, we can see from a total market cap standpoint, the $1.12 trillion area is really a major handle. This goes back down into BTC's 28K region, which ultimately would signify a major shift out of this bullish momentum. Until then, all we can move is based on what the chart is telling us, and the chart is simply telling us that we can expect these pushes down into these regions. The question is, what happens after these regions? This is really what's next to really figure out and for us to see as time does come along. When you take a look at the other markets, Ethereum, the alt market, we are starting to see a short-term shift out of this market here. As we can see, we are starting to break through on a longer time frame, a more critical level here. And this ultimately could warrant price to start pushing down into some pretty low levels that we haven't seen for nearly a year. This could ultimately signify some incredible buying opportunities, but be mindful once again, and as mentioned before, there's really one of two ways that can take place. We are pushing into some serious sensitive regions here. And so that could potentially warrant some type of pullback, some type of correction, as we've seen in the shorter term corrections, but that doesn't change the fact that market is still very much descending in this space. And so because of that, if price does in fact pull back, be mindful this pullback is still very much preparing for a continued descent. And so for the moment, we are very much looking for Ethereum as well as Bitcoin to continue to drop. And this is definitely going to go back down into what we've seen on the total market cap. And we're going to take a look at the alt market in just a second. Further depreciation is expected for the short term. For some of these pairs like Ethereum and potentially for the alt market as well, we could expect some additional pressure just because of the points that we are breaking through. As Excelsius has shown us, Excelsius is very much indicating to us right now that, hey, we're breaking through a key level here of this 2657 area. Ultimately, if we do successfully close below by the end of this week, it may start to warrant a shift out of this bull run that did take place nearly in July of 2021. And we may start to erase those gains and start pushing back down into these previous levels. And so this is really what we want to be mindful of when it comes down to market structure and ultimate pressure. But it doesn't take away from the fact that all of this has already taken place, and for the moment doesn't look to be erased by any means. It's important to be mindful, though, of the type of movements that we have been receiving now for a very long period of time, which has been one direction, and with this will result in the type of movements that we are seeing. Now, last but not least, taking a look at the alt market as well, we can very much see here that we're not necessarily breaking through any type of significant level according to Excelsius. However, that's not to say, and I'm sure if we drop down to the daily time frame, that price still can't expect to push down into this $600 billion region. Unfortunately, we did just cross back below that $1 trillion area, and we can definitely see from more of an intraday standpoint here that we can very much expect price to continue to depreciate, especially after getting through these key levels of the 1 to 1.1 trillion. Just as illustrated on Ethereum and BTC as well, we can very much expect one of two things to take place: further depreciation into this previous region here, or we can expect some type of pullbacks, but nonetheless, we're still expecting those legs to take place. Now, as shown with the institutional volume, that the majority of volume is sitting within these regions here. And so with this, we can very much expect that type of deceleration and exhaustion as well when it does come down. Now, be mindful, the total market cap did just recently break through some pretty significant points here. And so no question, we definitely can expect some type of further continued movement. The question simply becomes, when is it going to take place and how is it going to take place? We're simply moving based on what the market is telling us, not what we are thinking. Be mindful, in the end of the day, we as traders, we trade what we think, not necessarily what we see. And so with this, market is showing us further depreciating momentum for the moment, and this is the biggest thing to be mindful of. If we do start to shift out in a more longer term viewpoint, we ultimately have to start breaking down some of those key levels that we illustrated before. And until that happens, we can definitely expect further continuation of this bearish pressure. And so with that, legends, that's going to conclude today's video, really taking a look at the crypto market space as a whole, utilizing Excelsius in addition to our own knowledge to really give us that edge that we are seeking. For those that are not a part of Excelsius, you can get started today at www.pinksand.co/Excelsius. Excelsius is a state-of-the-art trading algorithm designed to take your trading to a whole new level, to give you the unfair advantage in which we all seek. And so definitely get plugged in and go experience the advantage. It's going to conclude today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you all in the next video.